Thank you so much for everyone joining our webinar on ensuring building safety through advanced monitoring. I'm having a lag for the next slide. Let's see. There we go. My name is Amber, and I'm the North American Sales Director for Move Solutions. I've been with Move Solutions for the past 3 years, going on 4, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have our partner Abe from Peak Sensor Systems with us today, so I'll let him say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So to give you some background on Move Solutions and our story, so the company was founded in 2017 in Italy as a response to the infrastructure crisis. That is a crisis around the entire world and in all infrastructure. Today we're talking about buildings, but at that time, we saw the need to have an easy to use and easily deployable system because there's a huge lack, and still today, of asset monitoring. So buildings, bridges, all sorts of infrastructure is not monitored. And so we worked on a technology, on designing the technology and data processing tools to make a system that can be easily scalable and can be used not just by the big engineering firms, but by the everyday asset owner. So we're making it so that if you own a building or you own an asset, it can be monitored. And we believe a lot in the power of IoT sensors and AI. So not just on the hardware, which is small wireless sensors, they're battery powered, they're easy to install, but also in the data elaboration, because looking in the past and even still today, typically these asset monitoring, structural health monitoring systems are a system that are wired, they're big, they're hard to install, they're hard to deploy, but not just that. You typically would need to have, an engineer sitting that is collecting all of this data, post-processing all of this data, and it's something that's not fast and really expensive. And so we came up with the MyMove IoT platform. This is a tool that you can use on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, and it gives you access to elaborated, meaningful data any time of the day. So 24/7, you can get on, you can get alerted to changes in your structure, and you can view what's happening with your structure anytime from anywhere. So Move Solutions, we started in Italy. We're working all over the world now, and we've worked in many different industries. So today we're talking about buildings or vertical structures, but we do also work in construction site monitoring, bridge monitoring, and railway monitoring. So these are the main applications that we have all over the world, especially in North America. So to get into the actual building monitoring, so looking at smart building monitoring and what we can actually do with it, because buildings are complex, and depending on the building that you're managing, the building that you're owning, and where you're at in the world, there are different problems and different instances on why you might want to or need to monitor your asset. So going over the main applications, and that's something nice about the system, is depending on your needs, we can have a custom application and system depending on the sensors that you use to solve the problems that you have. So the first application is looking at the frequencies and modal shapes with our accelerometers. And what does that mean? So that is looking at the vibrations of your structure. So if you have a building, every building has a natural vibration to it. So depending on the design, the shape, the height, the materials used, you have your own natural frequency in your building. What we do is we track the vibrations that move throughout the building on a daily basis, and we look at those for changes. And so what we do is something called finding the modal shapes, and it's basically what it sounds like, and finding the shapes of your building based on how the vibrations are moving through that building. And what we do with that information is we understand in the long term if there are changes happening to your building. You may look at your building and you may see nothing wrong with it, but actually you may have some cracking on some structural elements, you may have some settlement, you may have some foundation issues, and all of that is contributing to how your building is performing. So it's looking at not just what you can see with your eyes or not just those permanent movements, but how the vibrations are moving through that building. Next, we have vibrational analysis. Different from looking at the natural frequencies, this is looking on how the vibrations are affecting your structure. So a good example would be, say you have a building and it's next to a construction site, and you want to make sure that the vibrations coming from that construction site are not damaging your building. The vibrometer is a great tool because you can add it on your structure. It has preset regulations, so depending on the area that you're in, depending on the materials of your building, you can use preset regulations that if vibrations are exceeding a certain threshold that can cause damage to your building, you're alerted to that and you can understand, okay, what's causing these vibrations, and you can stop them from happening. In cases of construction, you may be in an area of seismic activity or other cases. Um, but you can at least understand if the vibrations went past a certain threshold that you need to understand, okay, has my structure, my building been damaged? Next, we have the inclination and building stability, really, of your structure. And this is looking at the slow, permanent changes of the building. So we use our tilt meters, which is a static sensor. So basically it's telling you, okay, is my building moving from point A to point B permanently? And this is really important to understand, over the long term, if your building is slowly moving. It can pick up fast changes as well, but typically if you're monitoring long term, you want to understand before you have big movements quickly if that structure is moving. We also have the slab vertical deflection, and commonly we use this for applications such as roof sag. So say you're in an area that you get a lot of snow, maybe you're in Florida and you have to add a lot of equipment such as air conditioners onto the roof of your building, and you want to understand roof sag as an example. We can add the tilt meters onto any slab, and we have the tools that automatically calculate if there is sag happening to that slab. So it's good in many applications, especially when adding weight to certain areas. We also have the wind impact analysis. So if we're talking about Florida in hurricanes, this can be really important information to have, especially when using it in conjunction with all of the other sensors, because you can track the wind on your structure. So if you're looking at the wind speed, the wind direction, and you can correlate that data with the data from the other sensors. So has the wind impacted your building structurally based on the data from the other sensors? Also with crack monitoring, so every building out there has some cracking that is happening, and it's natural and it's normal, but it's important to understand if the cracks are getting worse over time, what's causing the cracks to get worse over time. And you can do that easily with a small wireless crack meter that you can track your cracks. And so if we're talking about a hurricane and you're monitoring before, during, and after a hurricane, you can understand, okay, this crack has increased the size, this much from the hurricane that we just had. And you can understand, okay, I need to start fixing some things before the next hurricane where it can cause a lot of damage. We also have groundwater monitoring. So a lot of problems, especially with foundations and with buildings, is caused by groundwater. And so tracking your groundwater, if you're having issues, can give you a lot of information if you're trying to figure out why you're having certain issues. And finally, we have the foundation stability. So nothing more important than a stable foundation when we're talking about buildings. And so monitoring the foundation can give you a lot of insights on what's happening with the rest of your building. And that takes me to my final slide on the advantages of smart monitoring. So going through all of the applications, they all sound great, but what advantages do you have from monitoring your building? And the first one is efficient building oversight. So you only know what you know. So trying to manage a building and trying to make decisions with no data is not an easy task. So having real-time data, having information that can help you manage your building and make decisions and, effectively prioritize your resources can be really helpful and cost-effective in the long term. It also takes me to increased safety. I mean, if you're watching your building every day, you're getting 24/7 data and you can understand any changes in the short term, it increases the safety of that structure. You can make decisions quickly and you can prioritize the people that are occupying the building. It gives you real-time structural insight. So kind of going back to my two previous points, having real-time data on the structural insights of your building helps you to prioritize your resources and make the decisions. It also gives you storm resilience with minimal downtime. If you're monitoring your building before, during, and after a storm, you can easily say, there have been no changes, no structural changes, nothing has happened to this building from this hurricane. Or you can see clearly, okay, I had a big storm, there's some damage, and we see the changes here and here. And of course, you can make the decisions that you need to make in the short term. And overall, it gives you a predictive maintenance of the building. It helps you understand when you need to take action and where you need to take action. So if you have certain things on your list that you need to fix in the building, having more data allows you to know where you need to focus those resources and when you need to focus those resources. And now I'm going to turn it over to Abe, who is going to show you a real life case study of a project in Florida. So I will let him share his screen and show you our case study.
Thank you so much, Amber. And hopefully you can see that okay. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. Just to give you a little bit of background information on peak sensor systems. We're an IoT integration company, really is our roots, specializing in really three areas of technology. LoRaWAN sensors specifically, because they're wireless and they're persistent, and they have incredible long battery life, which means that when they're implemented in the wild, you don't have to go back out and check on them very often. You're able to get a lot of uptime from those sensors with a consistent amount and persistent amount of data. And then the data collection process and then the management of that data across unified platforms, and then the analysis of that data. And so we oftentimes like to think of our services for customers revolving around really integrating these three areas very tightly. And so it was a really beautiful fit when we began looking to partner with Move Solutions, because they actually did all of those things that we were already doing for existing customers as well. So this seamless experience, it's very elegant set of tools, not only allows for proactive monitoring, but also now predictive real-time monitoring of assets. And so we're providing this information in a seamless platform to architects, developers, engineers, managers, and government officials. Our offices are in Sarasota, as well as in Miami now, and we're servicing customers across the US. So what really brought us to Move Solutions was a little over 2 years ago when the horrible event occurred of Champlain Towers in Surfside, Miami, and the collapse of that building. One of our partners here in the company actually has people that he knew that passed away in that tragedy. And, always we're thinking about how could technology improve humanity, not just the bottom line. And so as a result of that, we really began seeking, is there a solution that exists out there that could be monitoring, critical infrastructure, including buildings, that would give us the ability to prevent this type of thing from happening in the future. Obviously, tragedy like this has many ripple effects, not just the loss of life, but the economic impacts of this as well that reverberate throughout not just ownership, but also, insurance companies, local governments, surrounding buildings, as well as what settles in, which is, can be, fear, doubt, and uncertainty, regardless of the age of your building, not really understanding what occurred. And so even to today, there are many studies being conducted by NIST that are looking at not just one sort of factor that may have caused this to happen, but recognizing that there's actually multiple factors involved in a situation like this. And so I can't help but believe that a product like Move Solutions could be looking at a multiple set of factors in a single location, and then using some of the technology overlay tools, et cetera, that Amber will talk about a little bit later, to be able to really look for the anomalies and the extraordinary events that are happening before, during, and after, storm season. So as a result of what happened with Champlain Towers, there were a series of recommendations that had been made. And one of those was about structural inspections happening for specific buildings within a specific distance from the coastlines and with a certain height, and so much of this was seen across Florida as an unfunded mandate, if you will, because it was very expensive in order to do that. And so this bill was just passed and signed into law, House Bill 1029, and it's called the My Safe Florida Condo Pilot Program. And this program, basically, to give you some highlights of it, it's really engineered to provide for storm resiliency for existing associations. And it's a tag along to individual residents that want to do the same for their homesteaded property in Florida. But this extends it as a pilot program to condominium associations. And so basically, beginning in July of this year, associations can make application to Department of Financial Services, and it's a $25 million grant, and per each association, up to $175,000 per homeowners association. Now, much of the language, as we've been reading it in the bill, is talking about inspections, but it's also talking about reinforcement of windows and roof structures, of which I think roof sag probably falls very closely in alignment with this particular bill. But I do believe that this is going to be something, it's just the beginning, sort of an opening of the window to changes in legislation that not just make dollars available to improve properties with structural health monitoring, but also to improve the legislation so that statutes begin to read for technology, not just physical inspections. So as a result of this pilot program, one of our customers here in Sarasota, Florida, decided that they really wanted to monitor their building. This is Lumina Health. The building was originally built to withstand a Category 5 hurricane. And so what they really wanted to do was understand, is that truly happening during hurricane season? And what is the impact? And so in many ways, this has become a lab case study for us, use case in resiliency before, during, and after the storm. So the types of things that we're looking to measure for is structural degradation, inclination, settlement, and roof sag on the building's roof. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Amber to talk a little bit more about this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I think that the Lumina Health is a great example of an asset owner that might not be who you think typically want to monitor their building, because usually we see a lot of huge high rises and huge structures that, okay, it makes sense to monitor, but it can be even your everyday business owner that has a building. This is a beautiful structure, this is something that they worked hard to build, and they want to ensure that it lasts as long as it can possibly last. And one of the ways to do that is by monitoring. So looking at all of these different parameters can give them really important information to understand the life of this structure, understand when it needs maintenance, and the overall safety of the structure, because, they have employees, they have people working in this building every day, and they want to ensure that it is staying safe for everyone. And so looking at the platform, so they want to do all of these things, but I think it's important to point out how are they doing these things as an asset owner. So this is showing the MyMove platform, and I think we have to go back one. Yeah. So this is showing the MyMove platform, and what you can do with this is manage, explore, and analyze your structure. So what happens is you typically get these sensors installed and then they show up on your platform, where in this case, they added the building drawings. So they had the drawings from the building. You can add your sensors onto that. You can see if they're online, offline. You place them where they're at in real life, so you can understand if there's damage, if there's movements, if something's happening, you can understand where it's at in your building by quickly looking because you have it on the plans. And then you can set all of your alerts and thresholds. So we have multi-level severity alarms. And what you do is at first you need to understand, where do you want to set your thresholds? Where do you want to see, if there's movements past a certain point in all the different sensors. And so you can set all of those up in the platform. It's really easy to set up. We have the multi-level alarms, so you can have, kind of your bare minimum setting where you kind of want to know if something's happening, but it's not, super serious. And then 2 additional alarms after that. So of course, if you get the red alarm, okay, we need to figure something out. We need to get people out of here. And this is something that you can set up easily from the platform. There's different analytics tools, so you can overlay different sensors on top of each other. So as I mentioned before, if you want to understand how the wind versus the inclination of the building, so you want to look at the movements versus the wind. If you want to look at the groundwater, you can take all of that data and you can put it on top of each other and see, if you can find out what's causing the changes, and you can see clearly, you can make reports. So you can put together a report, whether you're the manager of the building and you're sending a report to the asset owner, you're an engineering firm that's hired by the asset owner and you want to send them a report. So it's very easy to use, very user-friendly, and it's something that's super simple. And that's what we've really focused on, is trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. So yeah, I will share my screen so that way we can take some questions. I hope everyone can see it. I wanted to mention our next webinar. So we do a series of webinars. So our next one is on construction site safety. So it's going to be a really interesting webinar about a project that we did in the UK. So it's with our head of sales, Gilberto, and David from Survey Solutions. So if you are interested in learning more about construction site safety and what we did on this project, you can sign up to our next webinar. And here, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can do so. We will also send everyone, this is being recorded, so we'll send everyone a recording of this webinar, so if you want to look back. And now we will go ahead and take some questions. I will pull up the Q&A. Okay, so the first question is, can the sensors be installed externally? And how are they installed? So these are great questions. So you can install the sensors externally on the building, but you don't need to, because, it depends. If you have easy access and maybe you have some areas on the outside of the building that you want to kind of hide the sensors into, you are able to do so. But if you don't and you want to kind of keep them hidden away, you can absolutely install the sensors on the interior of the building as well. So you can even hide them, in the ceiling tiles, in the stairwells, whatever the case may be. So they're not super loud and in front of you. And how are they installed on the structure? So we can install them many different ways. So typically on buildings, we usually use an epoxy or a glue, so that way they're non-invasive. You can also bolt them onto their structure. So depending on, different elements on your building, maybe you do have an area that you can bolt them on. So you can do it either ways. We've even had some clamped on with heavy duty clamps. Magnets we've seen if you have some steel elements and you want to put magnets on them. So very versatile. How does this compare? So how does this compare to manual inspections? It's a great question because how it compares to manual inspections is that typically, I'm sure as, all of the asset owners on here and building managers and engineering firms, that, a structure gets inspected. And so you have a person physically coming out. Typically, they're doing visual inspections. Typically, they're using some surveying equipment to see if the building moved, see if they can find any damage. And how this compares is that it gives you, the 24/7 data, so you always have clear data. And it also gives you insights that are not always caught on visual inspections. And it also gives you an understanding of why there are changes to the structure. The sensors themselves are not going to say, oh, this is what happened and this is why this wall moved. But having a lot of data, having environmental data, having multiple parameters of data on the building can help you understand why this has happened versus if you're getting your building inspected every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, they're going to come out and say, oh yeah, you have some cracking here, you have this problem, but you don't have all of the data in between to understand how and why. And also you can't make decisions in the short term and quickly if you're getting manual inspections. Oops. I messed up. Oh my goodness. I'm clicking buttons. Okay, I have to reshare. Well, I won't share for now. What's the frequency of data collection and how long time-wise of data does it store? So this is a great question. The frequency of data is how you set it. So if you are doing more of a short-term monitoring and you want to have a lot of data, you can set the frequency from every 2 minutes, even down to 30 seconds, up to every 30 minutes. So it depends on your needs, but you can set the frequency to be really fast or really slow. For the sensors that do vibration, you set the frequency more based on thresholds. So if you want to understand certain events that are over thresholds, as an example, then you can set that based on the data that you want to get. So if you want more data or less data. Who certifies that the data is accurate and correct? So we have went through different certifications. It's something that, we can kind of show you on the data sheets, that the sensors have went through a process for the data. You can also get them, calibrated or third-party tested as well if you want to do your own certifications. But yeah, so there's some different options with that. And let me check okay. How am I notified if a threshold that I set up is exceeded? So you are notified by email. So it will send you an email. So if you have an alert or a threshold, you will be notified by email that it has been exceeded and by how much. Let me scroll down some more. Okay. I think that was the last question. So yeah, I think that's the last question. 12:30 on the dot. I don't think we could do that again, even if we tried. So yeah, I thank everyone so much for joining us today. And yeah, we really appreciate it. We will send you an email with the recording. And yeah, thanks a lot. And I hope you make it to our next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.